Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving deep today into something that, seems incredibly simple on the surface.
Talking about the future.
Exactly, talk about the future. But at the advanced levels of English, it holds an incredible, sometimes frustrating amount of nuance. If you're listening to this, you're certainly past the point of basic fluency. You know your tenses. You absolutely know how to say you have a plan.
And that's the critical threshold, isn't it? Our listeners past asking, is this grammatically correct?
Right.
The shift we're making now is to ask, is this the most precise, the most natural choice I can make right here?
Yeah, the most appropriate choice.
At the C1 or C2 level, the goal isn't just to avoid mistakes that cause, a misunderstanding. It's about getting rid of those little markers, those subtle structural things that separate a really competent speaker from someone who sounds effortlessly natural.
We want to help you move beyond just being correct to sounding, authentically natural. And to do that, we've compiled source material that focuses entirely on these advanced structural patterns.
Yeah, we're really zeroing in on how native speakers actually talk about their plans.
Their short-term plans, long-term goals, those, vague floating possibilities. And we're going to expose and I think dismantle some of the most common high-level traps that stick around even after years and years of study.
In this deep dive, it really requires us to understand the tone, the level of certainty that's implied by all these different structures.
For
example, using I'll versus I'm due to. They convey vastly different things.
Right. One feels very casual.
It is. All is a prediction, maybe a spontaneous decision. But I'm due to, that signals an external pre-existing obligation.
A schedule.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And understanding that difference is absolutely key to precision.
So what does this all mean for you? By the end of this deep dive, you should feel, I hope, entirely confident, not just listing your plans, but accurately defining the status of those plans. You'll be able to choose confidently between things like, I'm due to, I'm hoping to, or even that beautifully precise one, I'll have done X by then.
It really is all about acquiring fine structural control.
Let's start with maybe the most common conversational opener there is. The one that immediately forces you to make all these complex choices about the future in seconds.
What are you doing this weekend?
What are you doing this weekend? Or if you're a bit more informal, what are you up to this weekend?
It's the perfect practical test because our sources show that lower-level learners, they just rely so heavily on that comfortable default.
I'm going to
watch a movie. I'm going to meet my friends. And it's correct, of course, but it just flattens everything.
Right.
When you really analyze how advanced speakers answer this spontaneously, a whole wealth of structures just appears, and they add all this texture and context.
So to demonstrate this, let's break down two quick natural examples of weekend plans. These are kind of composites from the patterns we analyzed. Let's say I'm talking about my weekend. I might say, Saturday is fairly quiet, but I'm planning to clear my inbox. It's seriously getting out of control. And then I might go for a long run if the weather cooperates. Sunday, I'll probably just collapse on the sofa and read.
Okay, so a lot of possibilities in there. And if I were to answer, maybe with a higher level of fixed commitment, I might say something like, well, on Saturday, I'm meeting a couple of friends for brunch at that new place downtown. We booked a table ages ago.
Ah, okay.
Then in the afternoon, I'm due to pick up a package from my parents' place. Sunday, I'll be working on this presentation most of the day.
That's a great point. It's a subtle difference. But the structure you chose, it just signals that your plans are so much more set in stone than mine.
Exactly. And let's analyze that based on the certainty in the arrangement. First, you have to notice the present continuous for fixed arrangements.
When you said, I'm meeting a couple of friends.
Yes, I'm meeting a couple of friends for brunch. That uses the present continuous, which is the native speaker's default choice for plans that are booked, agreed upon, already kind of set in motion.
It's almost like a train that has already left the station.
That's a perfect way to put it. The plan is concrete.
So, if I understand correctly, using the present continuous for the future is almost like you're treating that future event as a current reality just because all the arrangements are already in place.
That absolutely tracks, yeah. Another example from the sources was, I'm supposed to be recording an episode. That uses the present continuous plus a modal expression, supposed to signal that pre-existing obligation. It's not an intention you might do, it's an activity that is expected of you. It's highly certain.
It implies a commitment. Now, my response was different. It used will, won't for less fixed ideas or predictions.
Precisely. When you said Sunday, I'll probably just collapse on the sofa.
Which I probably will.
It's a probable action or a prediction about your own state, but it's not secured in the same way a fixed arrangement is. If your plan changes, that structure, I'll collapse, it just disappears instantly. You also said something like, I'll probably drop by my parents' place. This is so often used for spontaneous thoughts or things that are likely, but you haven't really planned them in advance.
And we also saw a distinction with going to future continuous for general activities. You mentioned, Sunday, I'll be working on this presentation most of the day.
Yes, and that form signals an activity that you expect to be in progress, or a general intention that covers a big chunk of time.
Okay.
It's an interesting contrast to the present continuous. The present continuous focuses on a single fixed point in the future. I'm meeting at 10 a.m.
Right, like an appointment.
Exactly. But the future continuous, I'll be working it. It paints a picture of the activity spanning the whole day, or just happening generally. It avoids the rigidity of the present continuous.
That really helps clarify. So present continuous for the appointment, future continuous for the long, uninterrupted process.
Mm-hmm. And the final key distinction, the one that really opens up the advanced toolkit, is using verbs of intention and modality. These are essential for showing the degree of certainty about a future event.
Like when I use planning to and might.
Exactly. When you said, I'm planning to clear my inbox, that signals a conscious intention, maybe some preparation, but it's much less rigid than a fixed arrangement.
Right. It means I've thought about it, but it could still get pushed.
Yeah. And your use of might, I might go for a long run. That is pure possibility. It's completely dependent on something else, like the weather.
I see what you mean. If I had said, I'm going to run on Saturday, that would imply I've already committed to it. Maybe I've laid out my gear.
Yeah.
But by saying I might run, I've instantly conveyed how tentative it is.
Absolutely. Just relying on I'm gonna flattens all of those subtle distinctions. At the C2 level, you need control over how sure you sound and, how formal you want to be.
So you're not just communicating the plan.
No, you're communicating the status of the plan and your emotional commitment to it. Using this whole diverse vocabulary, present continuous, will, might, planning to it lets you convey everything from immediate arrangements to spontaneous predictions to tentative hopes, all in one conversation.
It makes your speech so much richer and inherently more natural.
Mm-hmm.
That foundation of natural usage, it sets us up perfectly for the next section. We've seen what precise natural English sounds like, but now let's pivot to those subtle structural patterns that so often trip up advanced speakers.
Right.
As you said earlier, these don't necessarily cause miscommunication, but they clearly mark a speaker as non-native.
And we need to analyze the specific types of, let's call it friction, in the language machinery. We'll look at them through the lens of a diagnostic conversation from our source material.
A dialogue between Alex and Sophie.
Right, where several deliberate, high-level mistakes were embedded. These are the kinds of mistakes that advanced learners often carry with them and just need to actively eliminate.
Okay, before we jump into those errors, let's make sure we're all aligned on some key vocabulary for talking about future commitment. These words came up a lot in the diagnostic material. A quick pre-flight vocab check.
First up, we have schedule. This is critical. It's a timetable, a list of planned activities, often one that's pretty fixed.
So like, my schedule is pretty packed next month with meetings and deadlines. It suggests a kind of established chronological order.
Exactly. Next, arrangement. This implies an agreement, a plan that's already been made, usually with 2 or more people.
It carries the weight of commitment. So, we have an arrangement to meet every Friday. If you use the present continuous for a future event, it generally means an arrangement exists.
Perfect. And finally, postpone. A really functional verb, it just means to delay something to a later time. For instance, due to the weather, they had to postpone the conference until next week.
Great. With those terms in mind, we can start synthesizing the analysis of the errors from that dialogue. The mistakes, as we noted, are insidious. They're so small omissions, incorrect verb patterns, that they just sneak in when you're speaking fast.
Let's start with what might be the easiest to diagnose, but the hardest one to eliminate. The omission of the am is when you're speaking quickly.
Dropping the be verb.
Dropping that crucial D verb. It's one of the clearest non-native markers, especially in structures that absolutely require it.
Yeah, in the dialogue, we heard errors like, I go to see my cousin, and later, I also considering moving abroad.
Mm-hmm.
These are moments where the speaker knows the structure, they know going to, they know considering, but they drop that tiny essential auxiliary verb.
And the full corrections are, of course, I'm going to see my cousin. And I'm also considering moving abroad. The dialogue also had I also going to practice instead of I'm also going to practice. It's a split-second structural collapse.
I have to confess, I hear that pattern all the time, especially when I'm trying to speak quickly in another language.
Yeah.
It shows how that necessary structure it crumbles under the pressure of trying to generate content.
That's a great point. It signals a lack of internalization of the structure. The speaker is focusing on the main verb going, considering, and they forget the structural frame that the be verb provides.
Now, why does it matter so much?
Well, the why it matters is that the be verb is absolutely essential for the grammar of both for future intention and the continuous forms. Without it, the sentence just fragments. It disrupts the natural rhythm of English.
So eliminating this habit is critical for C2 fluidity.
Absolutely. It's the linguistic equivalent of dropping a key bolt on a machine. The machine still kind of works, but it just rattles unnaturally.
Okay, moving on to verb patterns. This is where mastering English verb complementation becomes absolutely vital. The subtle differences between verbs of intention, they catch people out. This leads to the mistake we saw in the dialogue. I also was thinking to join a course.
This is a classic example of influence from other languages that might favor the infinitive, the to join part, or it's just a reliance on what seems like the most common structure.
But in English, specific verbs demand specific follow-up patterns.
They do, either the infinitive or the gerund, the ing form. And the rule here is that the pattern after think, in this context of considering something, requires of about plus ing, not the infinitive.
So the correct phrase is, I was thinking of joining a course, or I was thinking about joining a course.
Yes. And we should probably dedicate a moment to this idea of verb complementation because it's a huge advanced marker. This pattern, it goes way beyond just think. Generally, the gerund is used when the verb implies focusing on the experience of the action, or when the action is being considered generally.
Could you give us a quick list of some high-frequency verbs that require the gerund for our listeners?
Certainly. This list needs to become automatic. If you use an infinitive after these, it immediately flags you as a non-native speaker. So verbs like
Consider.
I am considering moving abroad. Not to move.
Avoid.
I avoid using contractions in formal emails.
Suggest.
I suggested meeting next Tuesday. And then there's look forward to.
That last one, look forward to seeing, is so frequently misused.
Yeah.
Even by really advanced speakers.
It is. The idea that there is a preposition, not part of an infinitive, is such a crucial detail.
So it's look forward to something, and that something is the ing verb.
Exactly. Mastering these structures, eliminating that intrusive infinitive, it's a real indicator of deep proficiency because it shows you've internalized the very specific syntax that follows certain classes of verbs. It's all about tightening up that machinery.
Okay, so error group 3, bare verbs for possibility.
This error highlights a really fundamental requirement for properly framing possibility in English. The flaw we saw was using a bare present tense verb after the adverb maybe.
Like, then we maybe go shopping, or maybe I join you.
That construction, it just sounds so clipped, doesn't it? Almost like a command or a telegram.
Yeah, very direct.
It sounds like a direct translation from a language where the future is just implied by context and time adverbs. But English needs a modal or an auxiliary verb here. Maybe is an adverb. It can't function as the verb itself.
So you can't just say maybe plus a bare verb.
Not in this context, no. Not when you're expressing a future possibility. The auxiliary verb has to step in to carry the weight of future time and possibility.
And the correction then clarifies the speaker's degree of certainty.
Exactly. So if you're more certain or you're making a casual prediction, the correction is, maybe we'll go shopping. If you're expressing less certainty, a pure possibility, it becomes, we might go shopping.
And maybe I join you becomes,
maybe I'll join you, or I might join you. That modal helper verb is just non-negotiable for smooth, natural speech in this context.
This is a great area to contrast tone, actually. We might go shopping feels much more tentative, more cautious than maybe we'll go shopping.
That's a great point.
With maybe we'll go. The speaker seems to have already made a kind of soft prediction.
You're right. Might is the possibility modal, whereas will is the prediction modal. And choosing the right one lets you modulate the implied level of commitment, which is exactly what we mean by advanced precision.
Let's move to error group 4. This one deals with those subtle flaws that pop up in conditional statements.
Which are essential for discussing plans that depend on circumstances.
The first error highlighted was putting will into the condition clause. If I'll have time, maybe I'll join you.
This is a very persistent, very visible, non-native marker, even at high levels. And the correction is fundamental to first conditionals. The structure dictates you use the present simple in the if clause and will in the main clause.
Right, so the correct phrasing is, if I have time, I'll join you. We use the present simple to state the condition that has to be met in the future.
That's it. Think of the if clause as setting the stage. Once the stage is set, the condition is met. Then the predicted result, the will plus verb, occurs. Putting will in the if clause, it just breaks that temporal logic.
And the second issue in this group ties back to our very first error, the missing be verb, this time in clauses of condition or doubt.
Right. We heard. Sometimes I'm not sure if I'm good enough.
That small omission, it just makes the sentence feel instantly incomplete.
You're missing the main verb of that whole subordinate clause. The correction is, of course, I'm not sure if I'm good enough.
It seems so small.
It is, but at the advanced level, eliminating these small, high-frequency omissions, the auxiliaries, the forms of be, is paramount. When they drop out, the sentence loses its integrity, and the listener experiences this brief, jarring moment of confusion.
Okay, error group 5, the future perfect test. This is where we really get into high-level precision.
The future perfect tense is so critical for discussing long-term plans and deadlines, but it's often avoided or used incorrectly. We saw the mistake. By the end of next year, I will save enough.
So the simple future, I will save, that implies the action starts then or maybe continues up to that.
Right. But if the speaker is setting a deadline, they want to focus on the completion of the action by that point. And this is the completed action rule.
So the function of the future perfect is very specific. It describes an action that will be completed before a specified point in the future. The simple future just doesn't have that focus on completion.
Precisely. If the goal is that the saving action is finished by the deadline, you have to use the future perfect. The correction is, by the end of next year, I'll have saved enough. It sets a finish line for the action.
You see this structure a lot in professional goal setting, reports, academic papers.
Everywhere that fixed milestones are discussed. Consider this. If you say, by July, I will write the final chapter, that sounds like a plan, but maybe the writing starts in June.
Okay.
But if you say, by July, I will have written the final chapter, that means the chapter will be a completed fact. It'll be ready for submission no later than July 1st. It signals a much higher degree of planning and completion.
We also saw a related structural error dropping, the past participle.
Yeah.
Like, I hope I'll have travel a lot.
Yeah, the speaker knew the auxiliary structure I'll have, but they reverted back to the bare verb. The correction requires the past participle. I hope I'll have traveled a lot.
So you have to master both the concept completion by a deadline and the form. Will plus have plus past participle.
Exactly. Essential for C2 precision.
And our final error group deals with style and conversational flow, specifically with negatives using will. The phrase was, I'll not regret the decisions I made.
Now, this is grammatically intelligible. You might even see it in very formal or literary contexts for emphasis. But in spoken English, it's highly unnatural.
So when you're expressing a negative prediction or intention in conversation,
contractions are overwhelmingly preferred. Using the non-contracted form, I will not, it just breaks that smooth conversational cadence.
it sounds a bit stilted.
It does. The correction, which just flows so much better, is the contracted form, I won't regret. These small preferences are what give speech its native feel. You're aiming for speech that requires the least amount of processing from the listener, and the contracted negative is a core part of that expected natural flow.
That was dense, but so necessary. If you look back at all those errors, the missing be, the wrong prepositions, the bare verbs, they weren't about forgetting basic vocabulary.
No, not at all. They were about friction in the underlying machinery of the language. The focus shifts from lexical richness, knowing lots of words, to structural tightness, using those words flawlessly within the required grammatical framework.
So we can distill that whole analysis down into 5 core lessons, 5 patterns that have to become completely automatic.
Lesson number 1, the mandatory be rule.
Always use am as our R with going to and continuous forms. Don't drop it in fast speech.
Examples, I'm going to apply, or she's thinking of moving. That tiny verb is the anchor. If you find yourself dropping it, you need to slow down and practice the structure as a whole unit.
Lesson 2, verbs of thought pattern, complementation.
Strictly use the correct structure after these verbs of intention or thought. This requires memorization and practice. Use think about doing, consider doing, and look forward to doing.
Lesson 3, possibility structure.
Never use a bare verb for future possibility after an adverb like maybe. Always use a modal auxiliary to structure the clause. You have to say, Maybe I'll join you, or I might join you.
The modal is essential. Lesson 4, conditional rule.
In real open conditionals, avoid will in the if clause. The structure is fixed. Present simple in the condition clause, will in the result clause.
For example, if I have time, I'll go. This is one of those visible errors, so fixing it drastically improves how fluent you sound.
And finally, lesson number 5, future perfect requirement.
Use the future perfect for actions that will be completed before a designated future point. This is the tense of precision when you're talking about deadlines and long-term achievements.
By 2030, I'll have finished my PhD. And remember, always use the past participle.
That synthesis is incredibly valuable. It shifts the focus from just passively recognizing errors to actively enforcing these structural rules.
And now that we've hopefully eliminated some of that structural friction, we can move on to the fun part.
Expanding your expressive capability.
Exactly. Now we move beyond relying on I'm going to or all. Advanced speakers need a wide range of specific, nuanced expressions to convey these subtle differences in commitment, formality, and imminence.
This is where the depth of English really shines. We've pulled 8 concrete, advanced structures from the source material that you can use immediately to upgrade how you talk about tomorrow, next year, or 10 years from now.
And this isn't just about sounding sophisticated. It's about communicating exactly the right tone. Let's break down these 8 essential structures.
Okay, the first one is a more sophisticated version of I'm going to. It's planning to. I'm planning on fying.
This is used for general intentions or long-range plans, and it signals that you've put active thought and maybe some preparation into it. It's a little less rigid than the present continuous.
And notice the 2 forms. I'm planning to switch careers with the infinitive versus I'm planning on taking a gap year with the gerund.
Both are perfectly natural, but they show a command over different complementation patterns. The tone is proactive. It says, this is not just a dream, it's a goal I'm actively working on.
Number 2 expresses active consideration. I'm considering. Plus ing.
This is excellent for expressing a possibility that you're actively weighing. It's a deliberate, ongoing process, not some sudden idea.
So you'd say, I'm considering moving to a smaller city for a better work-life balance.
Exactly. And if you use this in a professional context, it signals seriousness without committing to anything.
It sits perfectly between I might, which is vague, and I am planning to, which is firm. It's the perfect structure for that stage of internal deliberation.
That's a great analogy. It shows the listener you are mid-process.
Number 3 is great for urgency and immediacy. I'm on the verge of. I'm on the point of.
Plus ing.
This signals imminent action. You are very, very close to doing something. It builds immediate drama and certainty.
This would be excellent in a narrative or when describing a moment of high anticipation.
Precisely. I'm on the verge of accepting a job offer in Berlin. It means the email is drafted, the pen is poised, or she's on the point of handing in her resignation.
Compare that with the simple, she is going to resign.
Right. The advanced structure conveys the tense, immediate reality of that moment. Okay, number 4. Crucial for professional communication. I'm due to. I'm scheduled to.
This is essential for fixed official plans or obligations where the plan is controlled by an external timetable or rule.
Like appointments, travel, meetings.
Exactly. I'm due to give a presentation next Friday or that. The flight is scheduled to depart at 9:45. This removes your personal volition from it entirely.
It implies the event will happen because it's been set by someone else, like an airline or an employer.
And it sounds so much more professional in an email than saying, I am meeting the client at 2.0. Instead, you write, I am scheduled to meet the client at 2.0. The shift in tone is significant. It lends gravity to the arrangement.
Number 5 introduces conditionality and desire. I'm hoping to. I hope to.
This expresses desires that are dependent on circumstances or, good fortune. It clearly communicates aspiration without a firm commitment.
It's the structure of cautious optimism.
Oh, exactly. I'm hoping to publish my first article this year. That depends on the editor, the submission process, the time. If you say I'm going to publish, you sound either very confident or maybe a little naive.
Right.
Hoping to contextualize is the difficulty. Or I hope to set up my own business eventually. Note how eventually softens the timeline even more.
Okay, number 6. For stronger commitments or formal objectives. I'm aiming to. I intend to.
These are slightly different. I intend to is the most formal and strong. It communicates a firm commitment, often used in legal, political, or highly professional contexts.
Like, The company intends to merge the departments by Q3.
Exactly. Whereas I'm aiming to is a bit softer, but still very goal-oriented and personal. I'm aiming to reach C2 by the end of the year is a personal target.
So I intend to apply for a scholarship abroad is a formal, calculated commitment.
Yes. Choosing intense signals that you've considered the consequences and you are serious about executing it.
Number 7 is softer and more polite. I'd like to.
A universally useful form. It's for expressing a desired goal politely, and it replaces the often too direct or demanding I want to.
The structure of choice for suggestions or long-term dreams in polite company. I'd like to improve my public speaking skills.
And think about it. I want a raise versus I'd like to discuss the possibility of a pay increase. The difference is night and day in terms of politeness and sophistication.
And finally, number 8, our friend, the future perfect. By time, I'll have, plus past participle.
This structure is non-negotiable for anyone discussing project management, long-term educational goals, or financial planning. It frames the future achievement as a finished fact by a specific deadline.
By this time next year, I'll have completed my dissertation.
The clarity it provides is unparalleled. You're not just saying, I will work on my dissertation next year. You are defining the exact moment of its completion.
Okay, so here's the key takeaway, linking all of this together. When you start using this whole arsenal of expressions, the depth of your communication just explodes.
And the source material provides a perfect comparison to illustrate this. Let's listen to the basic version again. It's grammatically sound, but structurally it's so weak.
I'm going to move abroad. I'm going to find a job. I'm going to study law. It's flat. It gives us no information about certainty or timeline.
Now listen to the advanced version using the structures we just reviewed. Notice how much context is added. I'm considering moving abroad. If everything goes well, by this time next year, I'll have found a job there. I'm hoping to specialize in environmental law, and I'm planning to start a master's as soon as I can afford it.
Wow. Okay, so the listener now knows the idea is under evaluation, considering there's a timeline with a milestone. By this time next year, I'll have found.
The success is dependent on external factors, if everything goes well.
And the speaker has a proactive plan for the next step planning to start. The clarity really is night and day.
The advanced version sounds so much more natural and sophisticated because it accurately conveys the speaker's true intentions, their level of commitment, and all the contingency plans around their goals. The ideas are the same, but the linguistic wrapper is entirely different.
You move beyond being merely understood to sounding effortlessly articulate.
Before we wrap up, let's make sure you, the listener, get some immediate practice in. Application is everything at this level.
We have 3 prompts. Try to answer them right now, mentally or out loud, and consciously force yourself to use these advanced structures. And especially avoid just repeating "I'm going to."
First, this weekend, what are you doing? Try to distinguish between fixed plans and possibilities. Use, I'm meeting. I might. I'll probably.
Second, next year, what are your main goals? Try to use a structure that conveys aspiration and deadlines. Use, I'm planning to, I'm hoping to. By the end of next year, I'll have.
And third, in 10 years' time, where do you see yourself? Focus on aspirational and completed states. Use, I imagine I'll be. Ideally, I'll have.
Yeah.
I'd like to have.
Focus on choosing the structure that best matches your level of certainty and the type of plan. Is it a set arrangement, present continuous, a professional commitment, due to or scheduled to, a long-term goal with a deadline, the future perfect?
That brings us to the end of this deep dive. Our central theme today was that advanced English proficiency, it isn't just about adding new words, it's about achieving precision and effortless speech.
And you do that by eliminating those small, high-level structural errors, the missing be verbs, the incorrect verb patterns, and at the same time expanding your range of future expressions to accurately convey commitment and tone.
It's a dual process of structural tightening and lexical expansion.
That moves you from proficiency to authentic fluency. You stop making small, distracting errors, and you start replacing basic structures with sophisticated, precise alternatives.
And this knowledge is most valuable when it's understood and applied automatically. These 5 essential patterns and 8 advanced expressions, they really need to become instinctual.
Here's a final provocative thought for you to carry forward, building on our analysis of the future perfect and imminent action. If by, say, 2035, you'll have achieved a major life-altering goal. Maybe it's, I'll have established my career or I'll have saved enough for a house. That completion seems so far away.
But ask yourself this. What small, non-obvious action are you on the verge of doing right now, this afternoon, this week, that makes that massive future completion possible?
Ponder the connection between that imminent action, that thing you are on the point of deciding or starting today, and that colossal future achievement you will have done years from now.
It's a matter of ensuring that your advanced grammar reflects precision of your advanced planning.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Welcome back to the deep dive. So picture this. You're already proficient in English. I mean, you're a solid C1, maybe even pushing into that C2 territory. You've definitely mastered the core tenses. You feel solid with I will go. I am going to go.
The fundamentals are there.
Exactly. But then you find yourself in a high-stakes conversation. Maybe it's about planning your career or project management, and suddenly those sentences you've built so carefully just feel clunky.
Yeah.
They sound, technically correct, but they're missing that effortless, fluid precision that you hear from a native speaker.
And that subtle gap, that little distance between just being grammatically correct and being completely idiomatic, that is exactly what we're focusing on today.
Right.
It's really where advanced fluency is either won or lost. And the struggle, it's so often centers on how we talk about the future, especially when that future is just filled with qualifiers, uncertainty, conditions.
Or complex dependencies.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this then. We are moving way, way past the basics today. Our mission is to analyze a set of really common but subtle errors that high-level learners make all the time when they're talking about conditional scenarios and future plans.
And then, after we break them down, we're going to give you a whole toolkit of precise, native-like expressions that will just elevate your fluency and replace those sometimes awkward constructions.
Our source material for this is, it's particularly rich. We're using a dialogue snippet between two colleagues, Nina and Mark, and they're discussing these huge life decisions.
Yeah, big stuff. Potential moves to Barcelona, thinking about doing a PhD.
And they're both intelligent speakers, but what's great for us is that they're intentionally making these classic, subtle little slips.
The kind that just signal high-level learner, not native speaker. And we get the satisfying job of being the analysts here. We get to correct their grammar and, more importantly, upgrade their vocabulary.
Right. And before we dive into their conversation, because it's just a goldmine of these interesting little slips, let's anchor ourselves with 3 pieces of essential vocabulary.
Good idea.
These words are so critical for high-level planning and, C1, C2 mastery because they let you convey nuance almost instantly.
Absolutely. The first word is contingency. You hear this a lot in business and strategic planning. A contingency is, it's essentially a plan, a backup plan, really.
A plan B.
Exactly. It's a plan for something that might happen, usually something negative or disruptive, like funding for a project suddenly gets withdrawn.
I always think of it as, organizational foresight. It's not just, what if this fails? It's a systematic plan B that you've actually thought about and prepared for. So at this level of fluency, you don't really say, I have a backup plan in case the move fails.
Right. You'd say something like, we need a robust contingency plan in case the primary investor pulls out. It implies serious preparedness.
Yeah, it elevates the whole conversation.
It does. It immediately raises the register. So the second key term is tentative. If a plan or a date is tentative, it just means it's not final. It's still subject to change or confirmation.
It's the linguistic opposite of definitive, right?
Exactly.
So if Nina tells Mark they've set a tentative date, she's signaling 2 things. 1, there is a date. But 2, everyone needs to hold that date very lightly. It could shift.
It's all about managing expectations. It prevents you from accidentally overcommitting.
And a tentative agreement means, the big picture stuff is agreed on, but the tiny, crucial details are still up in the air.
Yeah, the stuff the lawyers get into.
Exactly.
Okay, so what's the last one?
The last one is inevitable. And this one stands on the complete opposite side of the spectrum from tentative. If something is inevitable, it is impossible to avoid. It will happen.
It carries this heavy sense of certainty, almost like fate.
Yeah.
So if Mark is talking about his company's finances, he might say that given their debt, a big restructuring was inevitable.
Right. It wasn't a choice. It was a foregone conclusion driven by those external pressures. Okay, so keep those 3 words in mind. Contingency, tentative, and inevitable. They help us move from just saying it will happen to being much more precise about it.
Exactly. About the likelihood, the conditionality, all of it.
Okay, that sets the stage. So So as we listen in on their conversation, it's really important to remember that these errors are subtle for a reason. They often come from a direct and very logical translation from another language.
Oh, absolutely. If your native language uses the future tense after, say, the word for if, your brain just naturally wants to do the same thing in English.
But it violates the structure.
It does. It violates the flow and the register that English expects. So we're aiming for natural phrasing here.
We're listening for anything that just sounds a bit stiff or makes you pause for a split second as a listener. So let's walk through the key moments and highlight where Mark and Dina, despite being very high level, trip up.
Okay, so the first area of struggle is all about the Barcelona plan.
Right.
Nina is asked if her move is still on track.
And she starts with this super common conditional error. She says, if everything will go according to plan, I'll be in Barcelona by next September.
And then she does it again right away with a time marker. Once I'll settle down there, I switch to the Barcelona office full-time.
Wow, yeah. Two classic errors back to back, both of them clustering around these time and condition clauses.
That will inside the if clause and the once clause.
Yeah.
It's just structurally redundant in English. We use the present simple as a kind of reference point to trigger that future action.
And what's interesting is Mark even says something like, if everything will go, that sounds weird. And that little internal alarm bell is key to C2 fluency, right? The ability to just feel when a structure doesn't flow, even if you can't name the rule immediately.
That's it, exactly. Okay, so moving on, the conversation shifts to the partner's hesitation. Nina's talking about the uncertainty of her partner joining her.
Right, because of his job hunt. And she says, so we kind of decided that I go first and he will maybe join me a bit later.
He will maybe join me. Now, this error is less about tense and more about, word order and how we use modals.
Yeah, it's about where you place adverbs of certainty, or in this case, uncertainty, in a sentence to make it sound natural.
Exactly. Then Mark, he asks about her contingency planning. He wants to know about her backup options.
And this leads him straight back into that same conditional trap. He asks, so do you already have some contingency plan in case the Barcelona thing will fall through?
There it is again, that same structural slip. But this time with in case.
Which just reinforces the rule, right? All these words, if, once, in case, they all trigger the same response. You need the present simple for a future possibility.
The PhD dilemma. He's clearly wrestling with the timing of it all, and he uses a hypothetical to explain his reservations.
He says, if I would start now, I'll be nearly 40 by the time I finish.
This is a really complex error. He's reaching for a sophisticated structure, the second conditional, which is for unreal or hypothetical futures.
But he's putting the would in the wrong place.
He is. Putting would in the if clause is a super common overcorrection for learners who are moving past the simple conditionals. And it just immediately flags the phrasing as non-native.
Right. And as he keeps talking, he shares his personal situation, and we get to the girlfriend's warning. He's relaying her plans, but he uses this really strange progressive form.
What did he say?
He says, my girlfriend is French, and she already warned me that she is not wanting to spend the rest of her life in the UK.
Ooh, is not wanting. Yeah, that hits a sour note.
Big time. It's that classic problem with progressive state verbs.
Mental and emotional states. In standard English, they're static. They almost always reject that continuous ing form, so it sounds really jarring.
And then they wrap up, and Mark makes one final slip. He's talking about communicating his decision, and he says, I will let you know as soon as I'll make up my mind.
A perfect bookend. It's the exact same rule we started with. Another will, where the present simple is required because of the time conjunction, as soon as.
It's fascinating how they all cluster into these predictable patterns. I think we've spotted, 13 areas for improvement?
At least.
Okay, let's organize these now into some core rules and, more importantly, provide some truly polished corrections.
So we've identified all those moments where Nina and Mark sounded just a little bit clunky. Now we can move beyond just fixing the mistake.
Right. We need to analyze the grammar behind it, provide the logic for why a native speaker makes a different choice.
Exactly. The focus is on making the grammar not just correct, but truly fluent.
And I think we have to start with the most persistent, the most defining sign of a high-level learner who hasn't quite nailed that native flow.
The conditional and time clause trap.
The big one.
The core rule here is, it's really a cornerstone of English structure. When you're referring to the future, in clauses that start with words like if, once, when, as soon as.
Before, after, by the time, in case.
All of those, yes. You must use the present simple. not will.
So why is this such a common error? You mentioned it earlier. It's that L1 interference, right?
It's so powerful. In many Romance languages, for instance, the future tense is the totally correct and appropriate choice in these exact same clauses. So the learner is translating that logical intent. This is an action in the future directly, but without respecting this very specific English constraint.
What's the logic in English then?
The structural logic is that the dependent clause, the if or when part, isn't actually predicting a future event. It's setting a guaranteed reference point, a trigger.
Ah, okay. A trigger. I like that.
And we use the present simple to make that trigger point feel established and certain, even though the action itself is still in the future.
So Nina's original statement was, if everything will go according to plan.
And this is probably the most classic example of that slip. The learner knows the result is in the future, I'll be in Barcelona, so they just assume the condition has to be explicitly future as well.
But the correction is just so much smoother.
It is. The correction is simply, if everything goes according to plan, it establishes the necessary condition. Think of it like this. The condition goes according to plan. That has to be met first. Only then can the main action, I'll be in Barcelona, happen.
And Nina did it again right after with the word once. Once I'll settle down there, I switch.
Here, once is functioning exactly like when. It's defining that future moment that the main action depends on.
So the correction here has two parts, right?
It does. First, once I settle down there, we change I'll settle to I settle. But second, and this is crucial, the main clause I switch also needs fixing. It should be, I'll switch to the Barcelona office.
Why is that? Why not just I switch?
Because using the present simple, I switch, makes it sound like a fixed schedule, like a train that leaves at 7 a.m. every single day. It doesn't fit a personal decision about a job.
Right, it's not a timetable event.
Exactly. Yeah. I'll switch conveys the proper future intention. It's a decision, not a law of physics.
Then Mark used in case, which is all about preparing for a possibility. But the rule still holds.
Yep. He said, in case the Barcelona thing will fall through. But the grammar is the same.
In case just means in the event that. So it needs that present simple reference point to define the scenario you're preparing for.
So the correction is, in case the Barcelona thing falls through.
Mm-hmm.
It's a perfect example. It marries that contingency vocabulary we talked about with the correct grammar, like, I'll take my umbrella in case it rains. You define the possibility with the present simple, rains.
Okay, now this one is where we get into some really advanced territory, combining that present simple rule with the future perfect tense.
The original was, by the time I will decide, I hope I'll have improved my German.
And by the time is such a powerful phrase. It's a deadline marker.
It is. And it demands the present simple in its clause, because it's setting up that point in the future by which the main action has to be completed.
So the correction is, by the time I decide, I hope I'll have improved my German.
And this is really sophisticated English. The action of improving German, I'll have improved, that has to be complete before the decision point, which is, I decide.
So I decide. Present simple marks the deadline, and I'll have improved, future perfect, describes the action that's finished before that deadline.
Exactly. It's not just a sequence of events. It's about completion relative to a future deadline.
Yeah.
The future perfect is like a little timestamp.
And then we saw this one more time right at the end of their chat.
We did. The incorrect version was, I will let you know as soon as I'll make up my mind.
Mark is signaling this immediate communication, which is dependent on his decision. And again, that time clause just resists will.
So the clean, correct version is, I'll let you know as soon as I make up my mind.
It really solidifies that one core principle, doesn't it? All those conjunctions, if, once, when, in case, as soon as, they all need the present simple when they're talking about the future.
Master that, and your fluency just takes a huge leap forward.
Okay, so we've dealt with the conditional traps. Let's move on to how specific verbs can actually control the grammar of the words that follow them.
Right, so these errors aren't about tense. They're about collocation.
Yeah.
Basically, which grammatical form, is it a gerund, is it an infinitive, comes after a specific verb.
And whether or not you need a preposition.
Exactly. And these patterns are super sensitive in English. When you get them wrong, it really disrupts the flow.
Okay, so Nina said, that's what I was thinking to do. And Mark had a similar slip later on.
Yeah, he said, she's thinking to go back to France.
Both sound a bit off.
They do. Because when the verb think means to consider or to contemplate or to plan, English almost always requires the preposition of or about, and then it's followed by the gerund, the ing form.
So using the infinitive, thinking to do, is just structurally weird.
It is. It's often a sign of that L1 interference again. So the corrections are, that's what I was thinking of doing or thinking about doing.
And for Mark, she's thinking of going back to France. Or about going back to France.
Yeah. Right. And if you do hear a native speaker say, think to do something, they usually mean I intend to, which is much less common. For just general planning, you should stick firmly to thinking about doing. It's the safe, fluent choice.
Okay, now this next one from Mark is about adding a preposition that just shouldn't be there.
Right, he said. For the moment, I just tell to myself that I take 1 year.
Tell to myself?
Yeah. The correction is simply, for the moment, I just tell myself I'll take a year. The key thing here is that tell is a direct object verb. You tell someone something.
So there's no need for to.
Exactly. The to is redundant before the object myself. You say something to someone, but you tell someone something.
And I see you also made a secondary correction there. You replaced I take with I'll take.
Yes, because Mark is describing a future decision he's made, not a current habit. And actually, to make this sound even more expressive of his psychological state.
The procrastination.
The procrastination, the internal debate, yeah. We can upgrade the tense entirely and say, I just keep telling myself I'll take a year. Using keep plus aching really conveys that this is an ongoing, repetitive internal monologue. It's much more vivid.
I love that. It adds so much character. Okay, now for the really tricky bits. The subtleties of word order, aspect, and how we talk about hypothetical reality.
So Nina mentioned her partner's potential move. The incorrect sentence was, he will maybe join me a bit later. The issue is just where that little word maybe is sitting.
It feels awkward. So correction number 1 is just a word order fix, right?
Right. You can say, maybe he'll join me a bit later, which puts it at the start to frame the whole sentence. Or he'll maybe join me a bit later. Adverbs like maybe or probably need to come either at the start or between the auxiliary verb like ol and the main verb.
But there's a better way, isn't there? A more advanced upgrade.
There is. Instead of modifying will with maybe, if you just want to show uncertainty, it's always more elegant to use a different modal verb.
So a better correction would be, he might join me a bit later.
Exactly. Using might or could inherently expresses that possibility. It just simplifies the sentence. Will suggests a stronger certainty, so when you add maybe, you're creating this kind of unnecessary grammatical fight. Might does all the work for you.
Okay, this is the big PhD decision error for Mark. He was trying to talk about a counterfactual scenario.
Yep, he said, if I would start now, I'll be nearly 40 by the time I finish.
This is such a textbook mistake. The second conditional is for things that are impossible or hypothetical or just highly unlikely. And you have to use the past simple in the condition clause. No would.
Let's break down that logic. English flags the unreal nature of what you're saying by shifting the tense back one step into the past simple so start becomes started.
Right, and using the past tense here doesn't actually refer to past time. It refers to a hypothetical reality.
Precisely. So the full correct structure is, if I started now, I'd be nearly 40 by the time I finished. You need the past simple in the if clause if I started, paired with would, or the contraction in the main clause, I'd be.
It's good to contrast that with the first conditional for real possibilities.
Yeah. So first conditional will be, if I start the PhD next week, which is a likely scenario, I will be nearly 40. But the second conditional, if I started the PhD now, which is a hypothetical, he's full of doubt, I would be nearly 40. That tiny shift from start to started completely changes the meaning.
Now for his girlfriend's feelings. He used that continuous aspect. She is not wanting to spend the rest of her life in the UK.
And that violates the rule of aspect for state verbs. Verbs that describe mental states, emotions, perception. Want, know, believe, understand. They're typically static.
They describe a state, not an action in progress.
Exactly. So the correction has to be the simple form, that she doesn't want to spend the rest of her life in the UK.
You might hear people break this rule conversationally, right? Like for emphasis.
You do sometimes. Someone might say, I am really hating this traffic right now, to be emphatic. But for just neutral, standard reporting of a long-term feeling like this, the continuous form sounds really unnatural, almost melodramatic. It's best to avoid it.
Mark struggled with adverb placement again later on when he was talking about switching fields.
What do you say?
If we move, probably I'll try to switch into data science. The meaning is totally clear, but putting probably right after the comma just breaks the rhythm of the sentence.
It does. The correction is simple. If we move, I'll probably try to switch. Again, adverbs of certainty like probably should just sit neatly between the auxiliary verb ale, and the main verb try. It keeps the flow smooth.
And this last one was a more mechanical error about the emails. If I don't answer these emails now, they'll still waiting for me on Monday.
He was reaching for the future continuous tense, which is a great choice there. It describes an action that will be ongoing at a specific point in the future. But he missed a key component.
He missed the B.
He missed the B. The full structure is will plus be plus the ing form. So the correction is, they'll still be waiting for me on Monday. That's a great choice because it really conveys a sense of burden, that the emails will be there actively as an unfinished task.
13 slips, all identified and corrected. We've gone from just, grammatically acceptable to structurally polished. But now we hit the crucial third stage, because even with the corrections, Mark and Nina's language is still a bit vanilla. They're using a hammer when they could be using a precision tool.
Exactly. Correcting the errors gets you to C1. Building this advanced toolkit, that's what moves you to native-like C2 elegance. We need to go beyond just fixing the tense to choosing the single best phrase for the job.
Okay, this is where we really maximize our expressive power. We're going to trade in that old workhorse phrase that will happen for a whole variety of options that communicate exactly how likely, how imminent, or how committed we are to an outcome.
I like to think of this section as choosing the right filter for the future statements. We can look at 5 distinct categories that move you from just simple prediction to really nuanced communication. Hashtag key, near certainty and commitment. So when the current evidence or just logical circumstance makes an outcome seem virtually guaranteed, you need language that reflects that kind of unavoidable momentum.
And the first phrase is so powerful, I'm bound to. This implies that external forces, logic, circumstances, maybe even fate make the outcome almost certain.
Right, it suggests an inevitability you can't really escape. For example, after missing 3 deadlines, the project is bound to be canceled.
Or, on a positive note, with your amazing CV, you are bound to get the promotion. It's like the certainty is being imposed by external pressure.
In contrast, we have I'm sure to. This also expresses certainty, but it often roots that assurance in, say, internal performance or effort. It feels a bit more within your control.
So an example would be, if you stick to that practice schedule every day, you are sure to pass the exam.
Exactly. We're confident because of the reliability of the effort. The difference is subtle. Bound to feels more fated, whereas sure to feels more earned.
And what about for professional settings, like project management?
Then you want, I'm on track to. This is the language of momentum and alignment. It signals that your current progress is successful compared to a defined schedule or a goal.
So you might say, if we finalize this documentation, we are on track to launch before the holidays.
Precisely. It signals accountability and successful progress, which is so valuable in high-level planning. Hashtag BB, likelihood and personal vision.
Okay, what about when we need to formally assess probability, or maybe express a really deep-seated personal intention, or even a lack of one?
Well, for a formal assessment of probability, especially in analytical contexts, you'd use I'm likely, unlikely to. This is the objective, high-register way to convey a measured probability.
So instead of, it will probably happen, you'd say.
You'd say, given the macroeconomic indicators, interest rates are likely to hold steady. It just carries more formal weight.
Now, what about this next one? I think this is maybe the most idiomatic phrase for rejecting a plan long-term. I don't see myself losing.
Oh, it's so powerful. It communicates a definitive lack of long-term vision or intention. It's a very natural way to say, that path is just fundamentally incompatible with who I am.
It's a soft but firm refusal of a future reality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, I appreciate the offer, but I don't really see myself staying in this role long term. Or maybe I just don't see myself spending a lot of time traveling back and forth.
It tells the listener that the idea clashes with your self-perception. It's so much more powerful than just saying, I don't think I will stay.
It's a statement about identity, not just logistics. Hashtag C. The very near future. Imminence.
Okay, what about when an action is literally seconds away from happening? Will or going to can sound a bit too slow.
Yeah, we need expressions of imminence. The standard one is, I'm about to. This signals immediate action, usually within the next few minutes.
Like, can you call me back? I'm about to step into a meeting.
You can add a little bit of immediate suspense with, I'm just about to. This really emphasizes that tiny window before the action occurs.
Hold on, I'm just about to click send on that email.
Yes, and for maximum dramatic effect, especially when you're at a critical turning point of a major decision, you can use I'm on the verge of plus ing.
Ooh, that suggests a breaking point, doesn't it? After a lot of tension.
It does. For example, After months of debate, she realized she was on the verge of accepting a completely different job offer. It just conveys high drama and momentum. #D official and scheduled events.
Now, what about when the future is fixed by an external schedule or some kind of institutional obligation?
Then we need structures that emphasize that external mandate, not your individual intention. The key one is I'm due to. This is for appointments, deadlines, or obligations that carry a sense of duty.
So, I'm due to meet with the board at 10 a.m.
Exactly. It stresses the fixed nature of that requirement. Similarly, you have I'm scheduled to, which is also obligation-focused, often for larger corporate events.
Like the new training is scheduled to roll out in February.
And finally, you see this one a lot in official announcements or journalism. The passive construction is set to. This just carries an air of finality and authority.
For example, the new trade agreement is set to come into force next quarter. It sounds fixed, unchangeable, and officially confirmed. #E future seen from the past. Narrative power.
This final set is arguably the most sophisticated. It's really reserved for advanced storytelling and narrative structure.
This is when you're describing a plan or an intention that was in the future relative to a moment you're describing in the past.
And often, these are plans that just didn't happen. So if you're telling a story and want to describe plans that were abandoned, you use was going to. This tells the listener the intention was firm at that past time, but something intervened.
So we were going to launch in November, but then the supply chain completely broke down. The listener understands the plan is now defunct.
Exactly. And to describe an action that was just about to happen before it got interrupted, you use was about to. This anchors that feeling of imminence in a past story.
Like, I was about to send the contract, my finger was on the mouse, when the client called to veto the whole thing.
Perfect example. It conveys that the action was stopped at that critical moment. And finally, the essential use of would in a past narrative. Here, would acts as the past form of will. It describes what was anticipated or predicted from that past point of view.
So something like, they had no idea what difficulties they would face in the coming months.
Yes, or every day he would dream about the day he would finally retire. This structure lets you keep the future perspective of your characters while staying grammatically consistent with the past context.
And that ability to narrate the future from the past, to just shift your temporal perspective so fluidly, that really is the benchmark of a sophisticated communicator. #outro.
So we've really engineered the language of the future today, haven't we? We've moved from fixing those subtle, pervasive errors to equipping you with this whole toolkit of high-precision expressions.
And the crucial takeaway for me is this. Fluency isn't just about using a structure that's correct. It's about choosing the most accurate structure, the one that conveys the precise degree of uncertainty or obligation or commitment that you actually feel.
To really solidify this, we strongly encourage you, the learner, to engage in some active practice. Try to take these 3 prompts and answer them, either aloud or in writing, and force yourself to integrate the structures we've reviewed.
Okay, number 1, describe a major professional or personal goal you have. And make sure you use phrases like on track to or likely to express the probability of your success.
Number 2, detail a conditional plan or a backup strategy for a scenario you're facing. Make sure you use in case or that second conditional structure correctly. Maybe even frame the whole thing as a contingency.
And number 3, tell a short story about a plan you had 6 months ago that just didn't happen. And make sure you use those future in the past forms like was going to or was about to.
If you can integrate those forms naturally into your spontaneous speech, you're successfully bridging that final, very difficult gap between C1 advanced understanding and C2 native fluency.
You know, it's interesting to think about where Nina and Mark ended their conversation. Nina said that people, quote, imagine everything will go in a straight line, but life is usually more chaotic. And we've just spent all this time mastering the language to describe that chaos with incredible precision, whether something is bound to happen or merely tentative or on the verge of occurring.
But if life really is that chaotic, the question remains, does striving for this level of grammatical precision, for this language of nuance, does it actually give us a feeling of control, even when the world is unpredictable?
That's a great question. What kind of language, the rigid certainty of will or the flexible probability of might and contingency, what best allows us to maintain both strength and flexibility when we're facing the unknown?
That's something to ponder as you plan your next move.
Until next time, keep diving deep. We're diving deep today into something absolutely essential. I mean, for anyone who operates at a high professional or academic level,
Right.
if you're tired of relying on the basics, the usual will and going to talk about the future, then this deep dive is for you.
Absolutely.
We are not just talking about being grammatically correct. We are pushing into C1 and C2 language territory, where things like precision, subtlety, and sophistication really matter.
Exactly. Our source material today, it comes from an advanced language lesson focused entirely on expressing predictions and forecasts.
Okay.
It's all about that linguistic difference between, say, just being understood and sounding truly fluent, natural, and this is the critical part, well-informed.
I like that.
Think of it as upgrading your language to match the complexity of your ideas.
That's the perfect way to frame it. You might know all the vocabulary for your field, but if you express your confidence level with a vague, I think this will happen, you kind of diminish the impact of your expertise.
You really do.
So our mission for you, the listener, is to really extract the critical language nuances that let you express precise degrees of certainty. We want you to sound like an expert guide to the future, not just a casual observer.
And we are going to build this mastery in 3 phases. First, we're locking down the foundational high-level vocabulary, the formal terms that frame any serious forecasting discussion.
Okay.
Second, we're going to perform a bit of linguistic surgery on the 10 most subtle grammatical and collocational errors that regularly trip up even advanced speakers.
And these aren't beginner mistakes, right? We're talking about those tiny little slips that once you fix them, just immediately elevate how fluent people think you are.
Precisely.
And
Finally, we'll build the ultimate toolkit, a complete scale of certainty, along with the powerful formal phrases you need for strategic reporting, and maybe the most intellectually satisfying part, sophisticated hedging.
I love that. All right, ready to unpack the future.
Let's start with the language that sets the tone.
So when you move into a professional environment, I'm thinking finance, strategic planning, academia, you notice a real shift in register.
A huge shift.
People don't just talk about what they guess will happen. It's all about structured analysis. And the source material highlights 3 specific nouns that really define this high-level discussion.
Yeah, and these 3 words, projection, scenario, and volatility, they aren't just, fancy substitutes for common words. They fundamentally change how the listener perceives the statement that follows.
How so?
They signal that the discussion is evidence-based or that it's strategically planned. It adds weight.
Let's start with the most data-driven one then, projection. Why is that word so much stronger than just saying my prediction or my estimate?
Because a projection implies a direct, almost mathematical link to quantified data and some kind of structured methodology. It's defined as an estimate or a forecast that's based on the logical extrapolation of current data and historical trends. So when you use the word projection, you're immediately placing your statement inside a statistical model. It signals rigorous analysis.
It adds accountability, doesn't it? Like if I say, I predict sales will increase, that's just my opinion.
Right.
But if I say the latest sales projections indicate a 15% increase, then I'm referencing a report, a model, a whole team of people who ran the numbers.
Precisely. And the example from the source material highlights this perfectly. It was, according to the latest projections, the company's revenue will double within 5 years.
Right.
That little phrase, according to the latest projections, it acts as a crucial disclaimer. It shifts the burden of proof to the data set, not to your personal conviction. This is the language of quarterly reports, of budget forecasting.
And it's funny, the counterpoint is that if you're talking about something purely personal, like your weekend plans, projection just sounds completely absurd.
Oh, completely.
My projection for the weekend is that I will watch 3 movies. It just doesn't work. It needs that seriousness, that quantifiable data to make any sense.
Absolutely. It demands a formal context. So let's move on to the second key term, scenario.
Okay.
This concept is so important because it acknowledges something that a projection kind of tries to minimize: inherent uncertainty.
I find this word fascinating because it seems to embrace multiple possibilities. It's not about finding the single truth. It's more like mapping out all the potential paths.
That is the strategic heart of it.
Yeah.
A scenario is defined as a possible future situation, and critically, it's often one of several distinct possibilities that planners are actively considering.
So you're admitting you don't have a crystal ball.
You're acknowledging that external variables are just too numerous to guarantee one single outcome.
So when a government or a big corporation does scenario planning, they aren't just, hoping for the best. They are actively mapping the pathways for the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Exactly. The source example really captures that risk management side of it. We're preparing for a worst-case scenario in which the project loses funding.
Right, the worst-case scenario. You hear that all the time.
Notice the phrasing, preparing for a scenario. You're not predicting it's going to happen. You're just leveraging that possibility for strategic preparedness. In fields like defense, energy, climate research, experts are constantly weighing multiple scenarios.
Like the high emissions scenario versus the low emissions scenario.
Precisely. It's an intellectual exercise in anticipating complexity.
And that strategic approach leads us right into the third essential term, volatility. Because if the world were predictable, we'd only need projections. We wouldn't need scenarios at all.
Yes. Volatility is a driving force behind the need for this entire advanced language toolkit.
So what is it exactly?
Volatility is the quality of changing suddenly and unpredictably. While its formal home is often in the financial markets, advanced speakers use it to describe any environment that's characterized by rapid, unexpected shifts.
So things like geopolitical instability, technological disruption, rapid policy changes, all of that is volatility.
Exactly. The source dialogue specifically mentioned worry about volatility in the tech industry. That's a perfect example. A startup might be profitable one day and completely irrelevant the next because of some surprise competitor or a sudden shift in consumer behavior.
Right.
And the example they gave is powerful. Because of the recent volatility in energy prices, it's hard to make accurate forecasts.
Okay, that makes sense.
By using the word volatility, you're signaling to your audience that you recognize the challenge of the environment. You're establishing sort of an intellectual high ground, acknowledging that a simple, precise forecast would actually be reckless when the variables are so unstable.
So to recap,
Right.
if you want to elevate your discussion, you replace what I think with a projection, but only if it's backed by data.
Right.
You accept uncertainty with a scenario, which is a strategic possibility, and you frame the difficulty of the prediction with volatility, the reason for all the unpredictability. That gives us a really solid foundation. Okay, foundation laid. Now we can move from the formal vocabulary to linguistic precision. This next section, where we analyze the 10 slips from that conversation between Lena and Tom, this is where you can make the fastest, most noticeable improvement in your fluency.
Yes.
Because these are the errors that sneak into the speech of otherwise brilliant communicators.
We're targeting mistakes that don't, destroy communication, but they absolutely compromise the speaker's perceived polish. We've grouped them by theme, and we're starting with the area that caused the most trouble in the source dialogue.
Conditionals.
The dreaded conditional.
The dreaded conditional.
This error showed up 4 times in that one short dialogue, which just shows how sticky it is. We are talking about the basic, fundamental rule of real conditionals about the future, yet advanced speakers break it constantly. The basic rule is this. In a real conditional clause that refers to the future, so the if clause, you must use the present simple form, even though the meaning is clearly future.
You save will for the main clause. The result.
You reserve will for the main clause, the consequence. And the reason C1, C2 speakers make this mistake is fascinating. They're so focused on the future consequence that their brain incorrectly drags that future marker, will, back into the condition. It's a cognitive slip.
I have to confess, I used to make that conditional error all the time before I really consciously focused on it. It's so easy to do. Let's run through the 4 examples from the source to really drill this home.
Okay. Mistake 1. Lena said, if even 30% of what they say will come true, our jobs are going to look completely different.
So the correction there is?
The correction needs the present tense.
Yeah.
If even 30% of what they say comes true.
Right.
Mistake 2. Simon then followed up with a very similar mistake. If current trends will continue, I'll probably still be in Europe.
And the role demands?
If current trends continue, simple present. Mistake 3. And again, in a simplified form. If that will happen. The simple correction is, if that happens.
So it's just a consistent pattern.
It is. And the 4th one, mistake 4, showed up even when the language got more complex. If by some miracle, I will still be in this company in 10 years.
That one sounds tricky.
But the rule is the same. The simple present of to be is required. If by some miracle, I'm still in this company.
So 4 distinct contexts, but one identical error. The takeaway is just crystal clear. Get your future conditionals right.
And we should emphasize that this rule applies to all future time clauses, not just those that start with if.
Oh, that's a great point.
If you use conjunctions like when, as soon as, before, or until, the rule still holds. For example, you hear this all the time. I will call you as soon as the meeting will finish. That's incorrect.
It has to be.
I will call you as soon as the meeting finishes.
That's a critical expansion. It shows that this isn't just an if problem. It's a time clause problem. It's the language of defining the moment of action.
Now, a quick C2 nuance point. There are very specific rare exceptions where will is used in the if clause, but it's only to express willingness or insistence or a polite request.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Like a receptionist might say, if you'll just wait a moment, the manager will see you. But for simple, real future conditions, you have to stick rigorously to the present simple.
Okay, good. Moving on from conditionals, let's focus on precision. Our next few errors are all about adverbs, those little words that refine and modify meaning, and how easy it is to misuse them.
Let's look at mistake 5. This is an adverb-adjective mix-up that just sounds really jarring to a native ear, Lena said. In the longer run, it's high likely that some positions just disappear.
Right, the phrase high likely instantly sounds off. It's a grammatical clash.
Exactly. We need an adverb, highly, to modify the adjective likely. Furthermore, the structure needs a subject, it. So the correct polished version is, it's highly likely that some positions will disappear.
So it's 2 errors in 1, really.
It is. Failing to use the adverb highly and failing to use that standard impersonal structure, it's that. This tiny slip really changes the tone from professional analysis to something more casual.
Then we had mistake 6, which is about adverb placement with the word exactly, Tom said. Every time someone claims that they exactly know what's going to happen.
Adverb placement in English can be pretty flexible, but when an adverb like exactly modifies the certainty of knowing, it usually sounds much smoother to place it after the verb.
So the correction is?
Claims that they know exactly what's going to happen. The original, exactly know, puts this slightly clumsy emphasis on the act of knowing. But placing it after the verb know exactly makes the phrasing flow naturally, and it emphasizes the precision of the knowledge being claimed.
It's more about rhythm than grammar, in a way.
It is. It's a rhythmic correction.
Now for my favorite one, mistake 7, which is all about register and collocation. Tom used the verb inventing when he was talking about colleagues just making up predictions. He said, I know they are basically inventing.
Yeah, and inventing isn't strictly wrong, but it typically implies creating something new and complex, often with a hint of creativity or genius like inventing a device.
Right, like inventing the light bulb.
Exactly. When you're talking about fabricating data or making up a story, the collocation is different. The natural, informal correction they provided is, they're basically making it up. That's immediate conversational fluency.
But as you pointed out in the critique, if you're writing a report for your CEO, you can't really use making it up. You need the full spectrum of options.
Absolutely. Register is key here.
Yeah.
If you want to stay neutral and formal, you'd replace inventing with terms that convey doubt or a lack of evidence.
Such as?
The formal options would be they are basically speculating, or they are essentially guessing, or, if you want to be a bit more critical, they are fabricating figures.
So the lesson is about mashing your vocabulary not just to the idea, but to the social context.
That's C2 fluency in a nutshell.
Okay. Let's tackle the last batch of slips, which are all about mastering specific structures and idiomatic phrases. Starting with mistake 8, a pretty straightforward structural confusion, Lena said, with all the regulation that is going to coming.
This is a classic example of confusing two future forms. The speaker blended going to, which is be plus going to plus base verb, and the present continuous, which is be plus ing.
So you get this impossible structure.
Right. The simple correction is that is going to come. However, because advanced fluency is all about natural flow, the source provided the most common conversational fix,
Which is?
with all the regulation that's coming. In rapid speech, the present continuous often just replaces the going to structure for imminent events, and it's much more graceful here.
Next up, mistake 9. This is one of the most intellectually rewarding corrections because it hinges on a complete reversal of meaning. Stop to listen versus stop listening.
Yes.
Tom said, every time someone claims that they know exactly what's going to happen, I stop to listen.
And this is a critical semantic distinction. It's all defined by whether the verb following stop is an infinitive to do or a gerund doing.
Okay, break that down.
Stop to listen means you cease whatever activity you were doing, walking, talking, working, in order to begin the activity of listening.
Right.
Stop listening means you cease the activity of listening itself. You turn out. You stop paying attention.
So Tom meant the opposite of what he said.
He did. He meant he no longer pays attention to that person because they're unreliable.
Yeah.
So he needed the gerund. I stopped listening.
Let's create a vivid, contrasting example to really lock this in.
Okay. Imagine you're at a conference. I was walking down the hall, but I stopped to listen to the keynote speaker's address. That means you paused your walking in order to start listening.
Got it.
But then the speaker starts making these wild, unsubstantiated claims. I decided he wasn't credible, so I stopped listening and went to get coffee. You ceased the activity of listening.
That contrast really proves why Tom's mistake completely undermined his intended meaning.
It did.
And finally, mistake 10. Focusing on two distinct idiomatic slips that are essential for true C2 mastery. First, Lena said, people who can combine technical skills with soft skills will be the most demanded.
The problem here is using the participial adjective demanded. It implies that the people themselves are making demands or are being asked for something specific.
Which isn't what she meant.
No. When we talk about market value or necessity, we rely on a fixed prepositional phrase. The correct collocations are the most in demand or in highest demand. This is purely idiomatic. There's no rule to predict it. You just have to know the fixed phrase.
Okay, and the second part of mistake 10 was another missing idiom. Let the details figure out themselves.
This is a perfectly understandable attempt to translate an idea, but it misses the established English phrasal verb. The idiom for allowing a complex situation to resolve naturally without intervention is, let the details work themselves out.
So it's work out, not figure out.
Exactly. We use work out to mean resolve successfully or resolve over time. The verb figure out gives a sense of calculation or intellectual deduction, which isn't what the idiom implies. Mastering these fixed phrases like in demand and work out is really the final frontier of advanced fluency.
That brings us to the end of the error list. If you just eliminate those 10 subtle slips, especially that conditional trap, you immediately elevate your communication. All right, so we've cleaned up the subtle errors. Now let's build the arsenal of phrases that allows for true communicative nuance. This section is all about conscious choice, choosing language that exactly mirrors your internal level of analytical confidence.
Right. If Section 2 was about avoiding sounding non-native, Section 3 is about ensuring you sound sophisticated. We're introducing the scale of certainty and moving away from a simple yes or no future towards a whole spectrum of calculated probability.
Let's start at the extreme high end of that scale, when you are personally convinced a result is absolutely inevitable, 100% certainty. What are the high-impact ways to say that?
The strongest formal phrases are, X is bound to happen, or X is certain to happen.
What's the difference there?
It's subtle. Bound to suggests a force of destiny or inevitability like, the conclusion is inescapable, given the current inputs. Certain to is a slightly more subjective statement of your own firm conviction.
Okay. Now let's step back just a little bit, maybe to 80% to 99% confidence. You're extremely confident, but you want to acknowledge that tiny possibility of deviation. We're talking very likely.
This is where we use strong modifiers. You have X is highly likely to happen, remembering to use the adverb highly. You can also say X is almost certain to happen.
I like almost certain.
It's good. Or for a slightly different flavor, maybe more conversational but still robust, the chances are that X will happen. That structure is great because it implicitly suggests you've considered the odds.
Moving down to the true mid-range. Quite likely or probable. This is where most serious but non-guaranteed predictions would sit, right? Maybe 50% to 75%.
I'd say so. Here, we rely on the core structure. X is likely to happen. Or, if you want a more formal academic feel, you can use the adjective probable. It's quite probable that X will happen. This suggests a reasonable expectation, but leaves plenty of room for error.
Now we enter the territory of intellectual caution. Possible, but not sure. We're down to maybe 25% to 50% confidence. This is where the modals really shine.
This is the critical domain of may, might, and could.
Yeah.
And while they're often used interchangeably by intermediate speakers, C2 speakers understand their subtle hierarchy of tentativeness.
Oh, this is good. Break that down for us.
Okay. X may happen suggests the standard possibility. X might happen generally signals a slightly lower, more tentative probability than may. And X could happen often carries the lowest probability, or it implies that the possibility is conditional on external factors.
Give me an example of that last one.
Sure. The project could succeed, but only if the funding comes through. It implies possibility that's tied to ability or resources.
That distinction between may, might, and could. That is exactly the sort of technical nuance our listeners crave. The subtle dip in confidence from might versus may is the essence of sophisticated communication.
And beyond the modals, you can frame possibility structurally. There's a chance that X will happen. Or the more cautious phrasing, it is conceivable that X will happen.
Okay. Finally, what about when we want to express skepticism or really low expectation? We're at unlikely, virtually impossible.
For standard unlikely, you rely on negation or the adjective form. X is unlikely to happen or X probably won't happen. If you want a smooth conversational expression of doubt, you can use, I don't see X happening.
I like that one. It suggests the outcome just doesn't fit the known pattern.
Exactly.
For absolute dismissal, near zero probability.
You use the absolute dismissals, X is virtually impossible, or the ultimate conversational rejection. There's no chance an X will happen. The conscious decision to move from unlikely to virtually impossible is the marker of a high-precision communicator.
Okay, that scale is incredibly useful. Now let's transition from expressing personal conviction to relaying structured, objective analysis, the language of reports and presentations.
Right.
These four structures are vital because they detach the speaker from the prediction, which lends it an air of authority.
Yes. These are high-utility phrases because they imply that the prediction is supported by consensus, or internal planning, or external data. They make it perfect for formal contexts.
Let's detail the four primary formal structures, starting with X is expected to.
This phrase is a real workhorse for reporting generalized consensus. It implies that relevant stakeholders or experts anticipate this outcome. The source example was, remote work is expected to increase over the next decade. It feels neutral, informed, and broadly accepted.
Second, the data-linked phrase, X is projected to.
As we discussed earlier, this links the prediction explicitly to a model or an extrapolation of data. It's highly favored in scientific and financial fields. The example was, global temperatures are projected to rise by 2 degrees. You use this when you're referencing technical reports.
Third, X is forecast to.
This is similar to projected to, and it's frequently used for macro-level predictions, particularly in economics and weather. The example, the economy is forecast to slow down next year. It implies a structured periodic analysis, often by large institutions.
And fourth, X is set to.
This phrase is different. It implies momentum, or that preparatory actions have already been taken, making the predicted outcome seem inevitable or scheduled.
So it's stronger.
Much stronger. The example, the new regulations are set to come into force in July. If something is set to happen, it requires a significant external force to stop it.
Now, this is the section I find most useful because it's where intellectual integrity meets linguistic performance. Hedging.
Yes.
It's not just about being vague, it's demonstrating that you're aware of all the variables and limitations surrounding your prediction. It manages the listener's expectations, and it really bolsters your credibility.
Hedging is your linguistic safety net. It allows you to make a strong claim while simultaneously acknowledging that your analysis is based on a specific set of assumptions. It protects your reputation if those assumptions fail. It's the highest form of linguistic subtlety.
Let's review the key high-level hedging phrases from our source material. These are perfect introductory phrases for any serious forecast.
Okay, first you have, from what I can tell, or as far as I can see, these are excellent for hedging a prediction that's based on your limited yet informed personal perspective. It says, this is my conclusion based on the data I have.
Okay, what else?
Then there's based on current trends. This is the quantitative hedge. It grounds your prediction in the continuity of data, but it implicitly admits that if the data changes, the prediction is void. This is crucial when you're discussing volatile subjects.
And the classic stability hedge.
Assuming nothing major changes, this explicitly rules out things like external shocks or unexpected policy reversals. It's particularly useful in political or regulatory forecasting.
And the last one.
Barring any major setbacks. This is a more specific, focused hedge, often used in project management or development. It means if standard operations continue without catastrophic failure, this will happen.
But what's really effective is when you combine these. The source gave us the ultimate example of layered sophistication.
Yes, that full sentence. Based on current trends, and assuming nothing major changes, it seems likely that remote work will remain common.
Look at the sheer control in that one statement. You start with evidence, you add a stability clause, you downgrade the certainty from will to seems likely, and then you state the prediction.
That is the gold standard of advanced forecasting language.
It says, I have thought about the data, I have considered the risks, and this is my balanced conclusion.
And mastering this type of layered hedging is perhaps the clearest indicator that you are not just a proficient speaker, but an intellectually cautious and credible analyst.
So we've built the vocabulary, we've fixed the fluency slips, and we've constructed the certainty scale. Now, let's make sure that this knowledge is immediately actionable for you, the listener. We started by looking at the future of work that Lena and Tom discussed. Let's quickly revisit their high-confidence predictions.
Right. They identified 3 main professional shifts that they described as highly probable for the mid-2030s.
Okay, first was the rise of remote and hybrid work. Lena stated that remote hybrid work will have become the default by 2035.
And notice the conscious use of the future perfect tense there will have become. That's a sophisticated structure in itself. It signals a completed state that will be existing at a specific point in the future. It's much more precise than just saying will be.
Second, the impact of automation. They were certain that routine analytical tasks are going to be fully automated.
The choice of go to be here is interesting. It signals a visible trend or an intention that's already in motion, often linked to current R&D investments or corporate planning. It feels closer, more immediate than a simple will.
And third, the shift in skills demanded. People combining technical and soft skills will be most in demand.
And that's the prediction framed with a corrected, idiomatic phrase, most in demand. So those 3 specific forecasts, however accurate they turn out to be, they provided a real-world context for the language we've just dissected.
So now for the most important question. How do you take this deep dive and integrate it into your daily professional language?
Well, you can start tomorrow by practicing conscious choice. Use that certainty scale to precisely define your confidence level in your next meeting. If you're 90% sure about a project's timeline, don't just say we will finish on time.
What should you say instead?
You should say, I believe we are almost certain to finish on schedule, barring any major setbacks. That small adjustment instantly upgrades your message from sort of hopeful assurance to calculated confidence.
And when you're aggregating information, you should shift your language to reflect that external objectivity.
Absolutely. When you're summarizing market analysis, stop using phrases like they say or the report suggests. Start using the formal phrases.
For example?
Well, if you're discussing a competitor's strategy, you could say, their new product line is set to launch next quarter, implying that the plan is already solidified. Or the regional sales figures are projected to fall in the next reporting period if you're citing data-driven analysis. This makes your summaries objective and authoritative.
And my personal favorite application, using hedging to structure your critical thinking, especially when you're offering a personal opinion that might contradict the consensus.
This is your maximum intellectual advantage. If you introduce a recommendation with a phrase like, based on current trends, the most prudent scenario is to divert funds, you're not just giving advice.
No.
You're framing the advice within a recognized set of assumptions. You demonstrate that you understand your recommendation is contingent upon external factors remaining stable, and that shows exceptional balanced thinking.
Okay, let's review those mental practice prompts from the source material one last time, just to lock these structures in your head.
Okay. First, the future of your job or field. Think about what disruptions are coming. How will your industry change? Force yourself to use the formal, moderate confidence phrases. Is likely to, is expected to, or there's a good chance that.
Second, a cautious prediction about a global trend. Pick a complex global issue, like inflation or migration. Make a prediction, but frame it with multiple hedges.
Right. Based on current trends, and assuming policy X remains in place, it seems probable that focus on defining the conditions before you state the outcome.
And thirdly,
your own future. Where do you probably see yourself in 10 years? Use the personal, conversational prediction phrases. I imagine I'll probably be, or there's a fair chance I'll. Practice using those informal yet precise degrees of certainty.
The journey from intermediate to advanced fluency isn't about learning a bunch of new rules. It's about applying nuance to the rules you already know. It's moving from simply being comprehensible to being linguistically compelling.
Our deep dive today really confirms a core principle of advanced communication. True fluency isn't measured by speed or even the size of your vocabulary, but by the mastery of nuance. When you can communicate precise levels of certainty and speculation, you move beyond merely delivering information. You start delivering a sophisticated, respected assessment.
And we have to return to that observation Lena and Tom made about forecasting history. The expert predictors of the 1990s, using all the sophisticated language we've just discussed, projections, scenarios, careful hedging, they were often meticulous about linear developments, but they fundamentally failed to anticipate the nonlinear, unpredictable disruption of smartphones and social media.
Right. If the most impactful changes are inherently unpredictable, if they fall completely outside of our models and our data sets, that leaves us with a pretty profound question.
Which is?
What massive nonlinear shift, the next black swan event, are we all failing to account for today? And how much credence should we truly assign to any precisely worded linear forecast, regardless of how expertly it is hedged?
It's a powerful thought that even with all the language of certainty at our disposal, the future remains fundamentally unpredictable. Something to consider as you structure your own forecasts this week.
Thank you for joining us for this advanced linguistic exploration.
We'll see you next time.